Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. This week on the podcast, we are going to talk a bit about something that's very important and something that I talk about all the time, and that is about injuries in cheerleading. Welcome to the Cheer Athlete podcast, where we bring coaches, parents, and athletes expert tips and advice to help keep cheerleaders healthy, strong, and at the top of their game. Now let's go. I'm going to talk about an article that I just found that came out in, I think, July of 2025, called A Systematic Review of Cheerleading Injuries, Epidemiological Characteristics, Biomechanical Mechanisms, and Prevention Strategies. It was written by Dang and Yu. I found it, it's in Frontiers in Public Health, and I will link the copy of that in the show notes. I'm also looking at an article that came out earlier from usacheer.org on their safety and research page, and I'm comparing and contrasting. And true story, I did use ChatGPT to kind of blend the two information and come up with a list of 10 bullet points that I think are important to bring to you and bring to your attention. So welcome back to the podcast. This research actually it's very current, and there's a lot of myths out there about cheer being one of the most dangerous sports, and I do think it is one of the most dangerous, but it's not necessarily the most dangerous. And there are lots of things that we can do to help keep getting injuries down. And so when you look at the numbers, the story is very different, and it's also very encouraging. So let's dive into the top 10 takeaways that we had from these two articles. The first is injury rates in context. Cheerleading actually ranks near the bottom for overall injuries when compared to other high school sports. In fact, sports like basketball, soccer, volleyball, and potentially football and hockey send more kids to the ER every year than cheer does. The downside is although there are fewer injuries, there's actually more severe ones. And while those numbers have gone down, about 15% drop between 2010 and 2019, the severe injuries like concussions and hospitalizations have actually gone up. So while they're less frequent, there are more serious injuries out there. The articles talked about who gets hurt the most, and most injuries occur between athletes who are between 12 and 17 years old, which makes sense because that's pretty much the age range that's starting to do more of the advanced skills compared to younger. But the younger cheerleaders actually tend to have more serious injuries when they do get hurt. These are ages 5 to 11. Because their bodies just aren't as developed and they're not ready to absorb the forces. Maybe they don't have the coordination and this, I don't want to say skill level, but the body awareness to actually, control what they're doing. And while the majority of injured athletes are female, because most cheerleaders are girls, studies show that male athletes in the base roles are actually at a higher risk because they're absorbing massive loads in stunts. Where and when do injuries happen? More than 80% of cheer injuries happen in practice, not during games and competitions. This follows my research that I had found in 2016, that practices were the most risky places. And that follows because you're just starting to learn you're learning your new skills and you're trying new things and you don't have the perfection down. And so I don't think that that's all that surprising. And what I like to hear is that these aren't happening at games or competitions, so that we are not putting something out there that's not necessarily ready to go and perform. But when we're learning, it is a big, we do have to remember that practices may need a little bit more awareness during practice so that we can reduce those risks as well. That's a huge takeaway for coaches. The everyday training environment is where we have the most control and the most opportunity to keep those athletes safe. And that's when you have the most control over, what the practices look like. So number 5, what do injuries actually look like? The most common injuries are still sprains and strains, especially of the ankles and wrists. I see it on social media all the time. What can I do about my wrists? Um, and so those are the most common injuries. And then those are followed by concussions. That has been consistent through the years. And these line up with what you'd expect from the sport that involves stunting, tumbling, and a lot of load through the joints. High risk skills. Um, the the stunts are the actual stunting is actually accounting for over half the injuries. Flips, basket tosses are risky. Almost 70% of injuries are connected to them. Pyramids and basket tosses are the biggest culprit when it comes to catastrophic injuries, including the head and the neck, or involving the head and the neck. And I think this, especially if this is happening in practice, like we are chucking people up 2 people high and needing it to stick. And until they learn, those are when the most shaky moments are going to come, and they're the highest, that's the highest point of injury. So just being aware of it, that's when we need to have more spotting. We need to make sure that our team is ready, and that we are not only ready for skill wise, because until you go and do that for the first time, are you really ever ready? But are they ready, like rested, and are they present? Has there been a lot of chaos in school? And where are they coming in, and are they able to be focused? And if we can control that, which is hard to control, we may have a chance of decreasing that risk as well. Surfaces and environment matter. I can't believe this is still a topic of discussion, because way back in the day, this was a big issue. So where you practice matters. It can make a huge difference. If you're falling on concrete or turf, it makes the injury more severe. And I think the article said it was 3 to 4 times more likely than on a spring floor. So, if you're cheerleading at high school and you're on the sidelines, you don't have the luxury of having mats, and definitely not on the spring floor. Crash pads and spring floors have been proven to drastically reduce injury severity. So if you're running a program, your surface choices are a critical safety factor. And can we get mats out there? And even if they're not, even if it's just the mat and not the spring floor on the sideline of the football field. I know when I was coaching at Holy Cross, we got smaller pads, smaller mats that were, in an inch thick, that we brought out onto the basketball court so that we could continue to do higher level stunts. We couldn't pull them out every single time out, but when we did at the beginning, it provided a lot more safety in that aspect. Side note on here, today is the 10th anniversary of my niece Lexi, who passed away in 2015. And she was a cheerleader. She died when she was 17 years old, and she stopped cheering, I think, after freshman year in high school, but she had cheered beyond that. And I know she cheered her freshman year in high school. And I say this because we have videos. Her mom had sent me videos of she and her sister Morgan, who would do back handsprings in their living room. And she would just put down a twin mattress, and the 2 of them would chuck their back handsprings. Now, as a physical therapist who talks about injury prevention, I cringe because I'm like, oh, they're going to face plant, and are they ready to do this? And they were beyond the point of really needing a spot, but they weren't super solid on throwing their skills, so they needed the surface to do it on. And this is something that we all do. When she came up to the lake house to visit me, she and her sister, we stunted in the water. We didn't have things around us, but we, throw up some stunts, and because it's fun, and it's fun to chuck things at Disneyland. It's fun to practice and show things. Like we used to go when I was in college, we'd go to bars as a fundraiser. Those basketball games that they have, we would go, they'd have tournaments, and we would go and cheer them on, and we would throw up stunts. Now we weren't throwing up basket tosses, but throw chairs. We learned though a lot, like we were very lucky. We didn't have any injuries. My nieces didn't have any injuries, and they were solid. They knew what they were doing. So the takeaway that I want you to get from that is, like, I know kids are going to throw things on their own. They have trampolines at home. Hopefully you have a tumble track that you can practice on and not use just a twin mattress. This was obviously, it was a long time ago, so the tumble tracks weren't around at the time. But make sure they have that cushioned surface. And if your kid is not able to practice it on their own, if they actually need a spot, like check with the coaches, moms and dads. You should check with the coaches and see, like, is it okay? I have a tumble track. I have a trampoline. Is it okay if my child is practicing this on their own? Because we want to make sure they have proper skills as they're going. And the surface is one thing. Trampolines are not foolproof. I've seen many ankle sprains and wrist sprains and knee injuries from people on a trampoline. So, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but make sure that they're ready to do it, because if they still need a spot and you're not qualified to spot, that puts them at higher risk. On the flip side, coaches, talk with your parents, let them know they need to be on solid surface. I broke my collarbone 3 times trying to do a cartwheel, a front walkover, and a front hip spring when I was from the time I was 6 to the time I was 12. Like every 3 years, it was like clockwork. And that's because I wasn't strong enough to do what I wanted to do. And had I developed those skills, I would have been much better at tumbling. I probably would have gotten some tumbling to begin with. So make sure that coaches, you talk to the parents, let them know what they're able to do. Don't let your kids just go chuck things just for the sake of it. Make sure they're doing it correctly. Make sure they know to use proper safety, because what's fun to look back at and reminisce about is part of what has brought us to this level now. And the more we pay attention to the research, the more we focus on building. We can't erase what happened in the past, but we can acknowledge it and we can move forward and we can make things better going forward. Life rules for you there. All right, let's get back into this. Number 8, the role of rules and governance. One of the most impactful changes came back in 2006. This is when I was coaching and my kids did not love I was coaching at Holy Cross, the College of Holy Cross, and they didn't love it because the U.S. Banned basket tosses on hard surfaces. So we used to throw back tuck baskets on the basketball court, and that all stopped. On the one hand, I think the crowd loved seeing us throw baskets because it always, created some excitement, especially when they were solid and hit. On the other hand, I don't know that they noticed a big difference. But as athletes, we're like, we can do this, let's go. But this rule actually made a big change in improving the safety of cheerleading. And that single rule cut out catastrophic injuries from basket tosses by about 75%. And that shows us that smart rule changes actually do save lives. And then I talked about training-based prevention. This is number 9. Training does matter. Research shows that targeted strength training programs doing closed chain eccentric loading for the hamstrings or for shoulder stability and strength exercises for the bases can cut injury risks significantly. Balance drills, coordination work, and fatigue monitoring all make a difference in how well athletes handle the demands of stunting and tumbling. This is what I preach. Like, know how your kid moves, know how your team moves, get them training that they need, get them strength training, the muscles that they need. This one research article, the systematic review, showed that the eccentric work and the closed chain work works best. So closed chain exercises means the foot's in contact with the ground. So things like single leg deadlifts, it's going to work your balance. If you're doing a real slow move down and then a quick up, you're going to get that eccentric load. You can do a single leg or double leg, but that's going to work the back of the legs, the glutes and the hamstrings and the calf. And it really gets that control to help protect the knee and the hips and the back. Once we get strong hips and back and core, then all the rest of it falls in place. Shoulder stability exercises, things like pull-ups, push-ups, overhead shoulder presses, and really so a pull-up, pulling up using assist to pull up and then super slowly lowering down that eccentric, so that lowering is eccentric work, and that has been shown to be more beneficial in helping to build strength and stability. So some of the big takeaways, what does it all mean? It means cheerleading is much safer today than it ever has been. We can't be complacent. We can't just let things go. Injuries are fewer, but they're still severe when they happen. We still have a high risk of concussions, and I think we tend to still blow them off. And I think it's really important that we don't blow them off. The solution isn't just one thing, it's a combination of enforcing the rules, making sure the surface is correct, making sure your athletes are not practicing without you there, using the safe practice surfaces and spring floors when we can. When you can't, making sure you do have appropriate padding. Make sure that there's no tree in the way when you're throwing a basket toss. And, we're not checking people up to go up and hang onto a tree to do their pull-ups. We laugh, but we used to practice when I was at Northeastern underneath a big tree, and sometimes we'd be up in the stunt having to tuck our heads. Man, I look back and the things that we did, we're all very lucky, but it also, now we know better, so we wouldn't necessarily do that anymore. The solution to injury prevention isn't just one thing. It's a matter of, following these rules, making sure the surface is good. Require coaching certifications. I think every coach should go through a strength and conditioning program. If you want to set one up for your coaches, reach out to me. I'm happy to do that with you. I think every coach should go through spotting and safety. Whether you are a parent on the sideline of a Pop Warner, especially if you're a parent on the sideline of a Pop Warner game, or you are coaching a world's team, like, the coaches need to be certified, and they need to know what they're doing. They need to know how to spot. They need to know how to teach. Now, I don't teach how to stunt because things are way beyond where I am, but the safety part of it and the strength part of it, it goes together, along with CPR. Knowing the types of injuries that are common, knowing how to tell if somebody is actually ready to progress, not necessarily holding them back for forever, but knowing, do they have the control to be able to do it? And are they ready to go? So encourage your coaches to get certified, to keep learning about ways to help prevent injury, and how to get your kids stronger so that they can do what they want to do. I love all of I think there's, the certifications and the national conferences are growing. Just I think in the last year alone, I've seen them double. I have to get to one myself next year, and that's great. And I hope to see some more injury prevention programs on the docket, so that we are not just teaching stunting skills, but we're teaching how to get those stunting skills better with less injury. Make sure we include the conditioning and not just throwing up repetitive stunts, that we're actually building some eccentric load and working our muscles and keeping our joints and our muscles moving in a good way. And then really watching fatigue, because that's a big driver of injury. When kids are tired because they've either been going too hard at practice, or potentially they've gone through midterms at school, or they've gone through choreography and their bodies are just beat down, either mentally or physically. Like, recognize that when your kids come in, and let them have a lower impact day to let their body recover, so that they can be better and they'll have less injuries. They're more aware of who's coming down out of a stunt, so they don't clunk heads. So if you're a coach or a parent, you play a huge role in this. Ask questions about the surfaces your athletes are training on. Make sure your coaches are certified and your spotters are properly trained, and keep pushing your athletes to build strength and stability, not just flexibility. Prevention is really a team effort. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with another coach or parent who could benefit. And as always, you can check my website, LT, the Cheer PT, for resources that can help your athletes move better and stay injury-free. I have an ask beyond sharing this episode. Every year on the anniversary of Lexi's death, we do a random act of kindness. And so today marks 10 years since she passed away. And if you can go share some love with uh, anyone in your world, it can be just a simple hello, a hey, I really like your outfit. It can, buy someone coffee. It doesn't have to be today. I'm recording this on September 2nd, 2025, and that's the anniversary. But make this week, go celebrate, do something nice for someone else, whatever that might be, and just appreciate someone and do a random act of kindness and put a hashtag next to it and say random act of kindness, Lexi Turner. And let's just keep her memory alive and going. She was a really smart girl and she's missed a lot. It's amazing how time passes and goes and she's still with us, but let's go show some love and show some kindness to other people because that's, I believe, what Lexi would do. Thanks again for joining in. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.